Welcome to the Sister Street Show with Mary Nunnally and Sharonata Giro, interactive show and virtual playground where we explore topics around entrepreneurship, online and in-person events, and the games that can be played with all of it. We invite you on our journey of sisterhood discovery and trial and error in the adventures of online entrepreneurship.
Hey everyone, welcome to this special episode of the Sister Street Show. As you may recall, Sharon and I are interviewing people that we really feel have made an impact in our lives. And so today I have the privilege of bringing Bobby Klinck to you, who is a mentor, a coach, an attorney with a lot of snark, and soon to be a released, published author of a book called Email Marketing Sucks. So you might have noticed from the background that the dragons are really busy reading the book about email marketing. If you're on my list or if you're following our show, you know that Sharon and I don't do emails. And so part of that is we didn't know where to go. And I've heard Bobby for years say, you've got to build a list, you've got to build email. And I'm like, nope, that's not my audience. Well, after reading the book and preparing for this interview, my perspective has changed a little bit, not 100%. Because I serve primarily a corporate audience. And so Bobby and I've had this conversation, and I will stop blithering in just a moment to let Bobby introduce himself. But there is a difference between sending emails to a corporate audience versus sending emails to folks that grab your freebie, meet you online, you're selling a course to, something like that. And so that's not a conversation for today, but I am changing my thoughts about whether or not I should send regular emails. And so thank you for sparking that after reading the book. So Bobby, before we get into the grilling session, why don't you just tell the audience a little bit about yourself, about your book, and what you do?
Yeah. So, and we're going to get to a little bit different in a little bit, but, so I am a Harvard law grad for the first, I don't know, I would say for the first 7 to 8 years of my career. I had the kinds of experience that most lawyers would dream about having on their resume. My first year out of law school, I got a prestigious gig working for a federal court of appeals judge. He was a judge who President Clinton twice considered putting on the Supreme Court, but he didn't. And as it turned out, it was kind of a wise move because he wouldn't have been on the court very long. He unfortunately passed away not too long after I clerked for him. So I clerked for him. Then I went to work for private firms, really prestigious firms here in Washington, D.C. At one of those firms, my mentor was a guy I just called Neil. He was a guy who recruited me to go join this second firm. Now we would have to call him Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch. So, I mean, that's kind of the world I was in as a lawyer, but I didn't really like it. And the problem was that at heart, I'm a punk rock kid from South Texas. And so putting on a suit and playing lawyer man was never a great fit for me. I mean, but that's what I did. And so I did that for a long time. And the problem is after you've done those things, it's hard to stop because you have all of this. Well, I've invested all this time. I've invested all this money. I've invested all of this in building this career. So I was kind of just in inertia. And at some point I had gone out, I had my own firm, and I was kind of in the phase of life of, I guess at the time it was my late 30s, which I think many people go through a phase where they're kind of like, maybe it was a midlife crisis. I don't know. But I started working with a life coach, and I didn't know why I was but I just knew I was feeling that way. And so she started by talking about relationships and all of these different things. And then after working with her for probably 6 months, she, in a session, asked me this question: do you like what you do for a living? And after stammering, for the first time, I admitted to someone other than my wife that no, I didn't. I really didn't enjoy it. And then, being a life coach, she wasn't going to let me sit there and wallow. She asked the next question, was like, okay, what are we going to do about that? And that was the start. Back in 2017 is when that question and kind of that exchange happened that changed everything. And she said she could see me giving legal advice and tips to business owners on podcasts, on radio, and things like that. She said I had a podcast voice, which I always take to mean I don't have movie star good looks. Maybe I think that's what it really means. But at any rate, so she made this suggestion to me, and my next session with her was 2 weeks later. By the time I got to the next session with her, I had booked a podcast agency that was like, I had paid them or was going to pay them to book me, I think, on 40 shows. I was like, I'm going all in. I had no plan. I had no idea what I was going to do with it, but I was like, I'm going to get into action. And so I did. And that was the beginning. And so I entered the online marketing space in 2017, but that's not really true. I was already using online marketing for my law firm. In fact, I guess you're not supposed to call it a best-selling author, but I was an Amazon bestseller. I had a number 1 rated Amazon book called Patent Litigation Primer, which no one should ever buy. But it was all
so exciting.
I mean, it was, it was something. But again, I mean, it was kind of like part of playing the game, because in that particular niche or subgenre or whatever, I think I sold 25 books the first week, and that put me into a number 1 bestseller
Wow.
category. So it's because there's not a lot of people buying those books. The funny thing is, I continue to get checks. I have tried to turn it off, say, stop printing that book. It was written back in 2015, but I still keep getting money from Amazon for it. I mean, not much, but $10 a month or something. And, but so I kind of entered the space though in 2017, and it was not a great beginning. 2017, I lost my shirt, my pants, just about everything I had in terms of what I'd done. I invested somewhere around $50,000 total, got nothing back. And so I was in the dumps. But in 2018, I kind of threw out the rule book and started just being me, and it worked. And so I started building a business, first selling legal templates. And then in 2019, I also entered the space of helping as a business coach. Although I like to say I'm not really a coach, I'm a strategist, but that's kind of, that was my journey. And along the way, I discovered that email was my superpower and the thing I enjoyed the most. And so I started teaching it, and people have loved my emails. I think partly because they're very different from the way other people approach
Most definitely.
And so as a result, I mean, that's how I got to be where I am today, doing this and helping people and writing a book and doing all the things when it comes to email.
That's very cool. Well, and I first discovered you because of your legal templates. My son and I started a business all right about the time you were going down that path. And it's like, ooh, I need to CYA here. And so let's get some stuff. And your materials were affordable and it looked realistic. And then I found your community. But reading through your book, I missed some of your earlier emails.
Yep.
And I have to say that those earlier emails are the ones that I normally just hit delete or unsubscribe for, because they were very like, my name is Bobby and I want to sell you something, buy my stuff. And it's like, okay, delete. It's been fun watching you evolve, because now I have friends who will send me emails that don't realize that I'm on your list and I'm in your community. You're like, wow, I just got this cool email. Did you see what this guy just said? Like, so how did you go from Mr. Boring, follow the mold, to really breaking the mold and letting your personality shine through? Because from reading your emails, I feel like I know you much more than before, which is just like, yeah, I know I need to buy legal templates. Okay, here, take my money.
So, I mean, it was hard because when I started out, I mean, again, I was coming from the perspective of being a lawyer. And so, and this is like, again, some of the funny perspective. When I look back on the headshot that I sent out, that booking agency, that podcast booking agency was sending out back in 2017, I was in the lawyer pose, sideways with my arms crossed, kind of crooked, in a suit. I mean, that's because that's the lawyer pose. If you go into lawyers' law firms, or law firm websites, you'll just see that pose over and over again. And so I was coming out of that mold, even though that wasn't me naturally. I had spent so long, I'd spent 15 years of my life in this world. And so that just felt like what you're supposed to do. And so I came into this online space and I heard, okay, you're supposed to send people an email every week. And you're supposed to create content every week. So I was dutifully doing as I was told. I was creating a podcast every week and I was sending an email about it every week. And like you said, I mean, it actually wasn't, I want you to buy my stuff. It was, hi, I'm Bobby. In this week's episode of my podcast, we're talking about.
And to me, the podcast was sort of like the free stuff, but it was still, I want you to go listen to my podcast. It's all about me.
Right. And well, and not only that, and like I look at it now, and even when I was making the transition, this was different, but I wouldn't even tell you the actual lesson of the podcast. It was all kind of that curiosity hook about you'll discover why you need to do this. You'll discover, and it's all about, like you said, trying to sell people on doing it. But first of all, I wasn't a very good conversion copywriter back then, so I didn't even do a very good job at it. But most importantly, I mean, that's all it was. And so you're right. I mean, why would you ever read those emails? And especially if you have a podcast, that's kind of the if you have a podcast, those kinds of emails are the dumbest thing ever, because people don't read your email and then say, oh, well, let me go click on this to listen to the podcast this week. If they're a podcast listener, they're already subscribed. Yes. So there's really no reason to do that. But that's what I was doing, because I was supposed to send an email. So I was at an event. It was my first entrepreneurial event that I've been to, and it was in August of 2018. And I got to give some backstory from before this, because I had joined this program called B School. It's Marie Forleo has a program. And looking back on it now, I look at it, I'm like, wow, it is so basic, but whatever it is. And I'd signed up through Amy Porterfield. And so I got bonuses through her, but there were like 1,000 people who'd signed up through Amy Porterfield's link. And so we were in a Facebook group, and I had become a celebrity in that group because I had decided to just give value, to be helpful. I mean, there was some legal stuff, but mainly it was talking about marketing, because I had learned a lot about marketing already. And so I had built this reputation, and I don't know, it was like somewhere around, let's say 3 weeks before the event, somewhere in that time frame. I may be off by a little bit, but it's good enough. I had created this video that I thought was kind of cool for my law firm. It was presenting the notion that I was a different kind of lawyer for a different kind of business owner, for creative online entrepreneurs. And so I posted it, and one of the people in the group, who at the time was just, she's someone I'd interacted with a little bit, but that was about it. And she said, it's okay, but it needs something. And then she posted, it needs more cowbell, and posted the Saturday Night Live, like, GIF or whatever. If people don't know, it's Christopher Walken saying, as a music producer, that a video needs more cowbell, right? And so she said that, and then she said, like, in her next comment, and the cowbell is you. And her point was that in this group, they had all gotten to know me as a person, and that's why they loved me. And yet in this video, at the end, you just saw a picture of me, not as formal, but still a semi-formal picture of me. And that was it. And she was saying, nobody from this is going to understand who you are. So that was swirling around in my head when I went to this event. I go to this event. The night before it was starting in earnest, there was a smaller get together. I don't remember how it was that people got to go to this. There were, I think, 100 or maybe 200. So about half the people who were at the event were at this thing. And there was going to be a meet and greet and a chance for you to take pictures with Amy. Well, at this point, I'd actually been working with Amy Porterfield and her team in a legal capacity and helping them with stuff. So I knew them. I'd been working with them, but I'd never met them because I live on the East Coast. They were on the West Coast. So I was excited. I was going to get to meet the people. So I'm sitting there, and all of these people I've met through this group are saying, come on, let's go get in line, take a picture. I was like, fine. Okay. So I stand in line. I get to the front, and then Amy's number 2, Chloe, was there. And so I wanted to take a picture with her. So we took a selfie together. Then I take my picture with Amy, chat with her a little bit, et cetera. The rest of the night's a blur. I went to dinner, I went to drinks, just had a great time with all these new friends. And then I get back to my hotel room, and I'm looking through my phone at all the pictures, and I see the selfie. And right behind me in this selfie, right behind me and Chloe, is Amy Porterfield, who has a very put together personality. I mean, that's just kind of what you see of her. And she's standing behind us like this, with her tongue stuck out, photobombing us on purpose to be hilarious. And I mean, I don't roll on the floor laughing, but it's the closest I ever came. I laughed out loud. Well, I don't know about you, Mary, but I like when things like that happen, I want to share it with someone. I'm like,
exactly. Yes.
Who would tell about this? but it's midnight. All my friends that I met there are gone, whatever. So I don't know what to do. So I send a text of the picture to my wife. Of course, I mean, it's 3 a.m. on the East Coast, so she doesn't see it. I go to sleep. I wake up the next morning and I see a text back from my wife that says, "Why are you sending me pictures of you with random women?" What hadn't dawned on me is my wife knew that I was, kind of working with Amy, but she didn't know what she looked like. So she thinks I'm literally just sending her a picture of me having a grand old time with these women while she's back taking care of our, I think, 3 or 4-year-old at the time. So that's the backstory. Then that day at the event, Tarzan K, who's an email copywriter, who was my first email mentor, gave a presentation about email. Now, I'd worked with Tarzan. She'd written conversion copy before that. So she did a presentation about email. And what she said is, you should tell some stories in your email. I was like, that's an interesting idea. Then after that presentation, I tell one of these new friends I have at this event about what had happened with my wife. And she looks me square in the eye and says, "I think we know what your next email is going to be about." And Excellent. So I did. The very next email was, in many ways, it is my most famous email I ever sent. It's now part of my welcome sequence. People get it because it's too good to pass up, but it is, the subject line is in quotes, "Why are you sending me pictures of you with random women?" And it's the story of what happened. And I sent that email. And for the first time, I actually had people reply to my email and say that it was hilarious, that they loved it. It was the most engagement I'd ever had on an email. And I said, maybe there's something to this. And when I told that email, or when I told the story in that email, it was way too long. I've tightened it up, like in the welcome sequence, it's tightened considerably from what it was. But the next week I was like, you know what, I'm going to try this again. So I told another story. It was not nearly as good. It was about my friend Melanie, who was the more cowbell person. And so I told that story. And then after that email, I got a response from someone who said something like, "I've been on your list for a long time, but for the first time, I feel like you're a person, not a company. And for the first time, I want to do business with you." And I said, "Okay, I'm sold." And I say, I'm like Pavlov's dogs. I take positive reinforcement and I run with it. And so ever since then, I've just been bringing personality to my emails. And so people get to know me through my emails. And that's why, like, you feel like you know me because, before we'd ever really met, because you're on my email list and because you hear these tales of things that are happening in my life. And like in writing the book, what occurred to me, which I hadn't even realized before, because I've been doing this and telling people to tell these kind of stories. When you do this, if it makes sense in your business, what will happen is that effectively you become a character, like a character from a sitcom, in your audience or subscribers' life. And they just want to know what's happening on the Bobby show this week.
Okay.
What happens. And so that's why they tune in. And then you deliver a message too. It's not just a story, because I'm not an entertainer. That's not what I do. I'm a marketer. But that's why they tune in each week. And then I get to teach them a lesson as well.
I like it. Well, and I would disagree that you are not an entertainer. You are clearly an entertainer who also happens to be a marketer. However, for the purposes of this show, we'll just focus on you being a marketer.
Okay, let me refine that statement slightly. There are people in the world who are much funnier than me if you're just looking for comedy, right? And so my point is, I don't want to just entertain you. I want to entertain you and teach you, because that ultimately is the important thing. And that's what's going to make you want to buy from me, is if I give you that lesson and teach you something too.
Yes. And I think some of the best educators, and I have a background in higher education, are entertainers to some level and are also marketers. So I like how it all rolls together. One of the questions, as I've been sharing my reading of your book, that I've gotten from some folks is, well, what if you're not funny?
Well, what I would tell you is my wife would assure you that I'm not funny. And what I always tell people is you don't have to be funny. All that matters is, and I've been thinking about this, like how to really frame this. What matters is that you can touch some kind of emotion for people. For some people, it's about being inspiring. I like to say, I am not the inspirational type. Now, some people will say I am inspiring, but I'm the kick in the rear end kind of inspiration, not the, I'm going to, give you inspirational quotes and tell you, you're going to make it. I mean, I am not the cheerleader inspirer. I am the,
right.
I'm the other kind. But my point is that you don't have to be like me, and your emails shouldn't sound like me. The point of the emails is not to be funny. The point of the emails is to connect with your audience and to build a connection and build a relationship. And what I recognized was ultimately what I was doing was building this relationship where people feel like my friend. Like they feel like I'm a friend and a trusted advisor and not some rando on the internet. And that ultimately is what the goal of your emails are, because if you do that, all of a sudden, when you do want to sell, it's much easier. But I always like to say, like, how you come across will be very different. I think about, Mary, you'll know who I'm talking about. There's someone in my coaching program who is she has a membership, which is a yoga, breath work, meditation, pelvic floor membership for pregnant women. And her energy is very much of a yogi, calming, etc. She should not be telling stories of wild antics. That would just be weird, right? I mean, it wouldn't make sense. And if she spoke like me at my cadence, which is just kind of a little bit frantic, it wouldn't seem right. And on the other hand, if I tried to talk like her and be very calming, and it wouldn't work for me either. So you don't have to be funny. You just have to be you.
Okay. So it's more about find who you are. Like,
Yes.
Who are you? If I'm out having dinner with friends, who am I when I'm having dinner with friends?
Exactly. And I like to tell people, you want to try to find different parts of your life, because like, as you're telling these stories, ideally you want the stories different stories will connect with different people. So for example, sometimes I tell stories from work, which relates with my audience in one way. Other times I tell stories about interacting with my wife, which, that helps people who are in relationships will kind of see that and understand that. I tell stories about my daughter, which anyone who has a daughter about my wife's or about my daughter's age will immediately kind of like, oh yeah, I can relate to that. I've told stories about high school debate, which randomly people were in this same weird little event I had to do at this one thing that I tell a story about. They relate to that. And so by telling these different stories from different parts of life, what happens is, like, different people have different perceptions of each of us. And that's fine. What you're trying to do is, and my daughter, I loved it in kindergarten, in my daughter's class, they would do this. If someone was talking about something and they had experienced the same thing, they were supposed to do this, which is the American Sign Language symbol for, I think it's me too, but it's like, I have that in common with you. And that's what you're going for. All you're going for is that type of connection, because we humans ultimately are, tribal in the sense of like, we want to be with our people, and we're just, that's kind of how we approach it. And so if we can find something we have in common with people, that's what we will connect with. And it will make us way more likely to continue to listen to them, to want to talk to them, to want to do business with them, etc.
All right. So you said we like to connect. We like to have our tribe. One last question before we really talk about the book and where people can find the book.
Yeah.
I'm building my tribe. I'm sending out my emails and people start unsubscribing. That's when I go in the corner and cry, right?
No. And again, like I don't do this anymore, but I used to say that if I don't have some spam complaints, if I go weeks without spam complaints, I get nervous. Like, you don't really want spam complaints, but let me be clear. You want people to unsubscribe. The only way you don't get unsubscribes is if you don't email people. Let's just be absolutely clear on that. But just as importantly, if you're just being bland and boring, you're forgettable. And you don't want that. If you want to truly attract your people, you have to be willing to repel the people for whom you're not right. And I have gotten to the point that I now literally am actively upfront when people get on my list, trying to tell them, do you really want to stick around? Like, so people who come in now through my freebie, my legal freebies, especially like one in particular, and I think all of them, but I'm not sure, they get the freebie. And then the next email says, like, the subject line is "The Clash had it right." And I say, the Clash had, this great line, "Should I stay or should I go?" And right now you face that question. Do you want to stick around and be on my email list or not? And I make a pitch to them, and I make humor, and I try to make a pitch of why they should want to stick around. But I'm also telling them, by the way, I'm irreverent. I'm going to maybe use some 4-letter words here and there, because I want people to know I don't want people getting down the road and being like, man, this is not what I signed up for. I just want people to understand, and I encourage it. But again, just from a more fundamental perspective, if someone's going to unsubscribe when you send an email that is not even a sales email, guess what? You're probably never going to sell something to that person via email. So what's the big deal of them unsubscribing?
That's a great point. And I'm thinking about your book too, because throughout the book,
Mhm.
what you're talking about is also throughout the book. Like, I'm going to take you off. You're not
Mhm.
going to like this. If you've made it to chapter 3, are you sure you want to be here? And I was like, okay, this is a great way to spend a Sunday morning. I'm just going to read this whole book instead of doing what I'm supposed to be doing, because it was irreverent. It was fun. It had practical advice. And so that's my next question: is the book is launching.
Mhm.
How do people buy the book?
Yep.
And how do they learn to write emails as good as you?
So, well, you can buy the book because, as I understand, this is dropping on May 3rd, which is my birthday, which is our book launch day. I kind of decided what better birthday gift to give myself than to launch my book. It will definitely be available on Amazon from launch day. Barnes and Noble, I can't guarantee. We are, as you never quite know. They won't give you a guaranteed date, but you should be able to buy it from all of those booksellers. If you are listening to this episode as it goes live, you'll actually be able to get it for 99 cents. The ebook is on sale on Amazon for 99 cents. So you can get it if you like reading it on Kindle or any other ebook, and you can do that. There's also a paperback that you can buy if you prefer a paperback. Now, the next question of how do you learn to write emails as good as me? I just got to say, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice. It's practice, it's practice, it's practice. And I do like to tell people, I am, in this respect, I'm blessed because my brain naturally sees the connections that I talk about building in the book. And what I mean by that is, for most of my emails, what I suggest you do is you tell a story that you can that's not directly related to your lesson, but that you can then use as a little mini parable to pull a lesson out related to business or related to whatever you help people with. I do that naturally. My personality type, that's what my brain does. Literally, in my Gallup Strengths Finders report, it's funny when you read it on one of them. One of the things it says is you naturally tell stories from your personal life to teach lessons in business. It says something like
wow.
that. Which
Okay.
I saw that. I was like, are these guys like looking over my shoulder? Like,
that's pretty amazing.
Because literally that's what I do. And so like, I do that naturally. Other people don't. You'll have to practice building those connections. But one of the pitches I want to make to people is that's not a skill that's just for email. Stories are one of the most effective ways for you to sell and market and get messages across no matter what. And so what you need to do is if telling stories is not something that you're naturally good at, work at it. Find ways to work at it. You could find these things. There are often you could probably find story seminars around you about how to learn to tell stories, because I'll just tell you, the most effective marketers are storytellers. And that's because humans, if I'm going to sit down and just kind of start droning on to try to teach you a lesson, people aren't going to listen. But if I say something like the tortoise and the hare, guess what? Your mind automatically said slow and steady wins a race. If I say the three little pigs, you say preparation is important. I don't even have to tell you what the lesson is. I give you that little thing and your mind does it, because human beings, I don't know, through evolution or whatever, we understand and learn through story. And because of that, it's one of the most powerful things you can do. And so you need to practice telling stories. You need to practice finding the stories that you can relate to whatever types of lessons or messages you want to get across, and then just do it and get into action, try it out, see what works, see what doesn't. And don't be afraid. I mean, you'll send some emails that will flop. I've done it plenty of times. It's okay.
I like it. I like it. All right. One last question, because we're just about out of time. You have this amazing resource available to people where you can learn about better emails and your website and all of that.
Yep.
You want to wrap us up and tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So again, anytime you write a book, you have a page where people go to. Now, most people like if any listeners here are in the online marketing space right now, what they're expecting is, oh, Bobby's coming for my wallet, because that's what happens, right? You write this book and you give people a taste, but if they really want to learn it, they got to buy it. That's not how I operate. So we have a page, bobbyklinck.com/email, that we have a couple of things. Number one, you can download swipe files, frameworks for how to write different types of emails. And we're going to add to those over time. And we're going to be doing it. You can also sign up for my 100% free Bomb You, which is Badass Online Marketing University, which inside of that is my signature course about email marketing that I used to sell, but I said, no, we're going to give it away for free. So you can sign up for all that. We also have an 11-part podcast series that is basically an audio mini course on email that I think of as kind of a supplement to the book, because we talk about things like, I wasn't going to write about deliverability in the book because, but you need to know about it. So I talk about those things. And then also we took a lot of information and wrote it down into 10 lessons. So it is it's like not an epic blog post. It's 10 epic blog posts all on one page where you can learn all of this stuff, and it's absolutely free. And one last little thing, if you're listening to this during launch week or anytime during May of 2022, we're actually putting on a 2-day virtual event, May 25th and May 26th. And anybody who's bought the book, even just the 99-cent ebook, gets a free ticket to attend. And we're going to dive into things like coming up with how do you come up with your voice, and what should your voice and your brand avatar and that kind of approach to email be, so that we can address this thing about people where you got to be funny. And one of the things I'll give you is I talk about the Jungian archetypes, and I am primarily a rebel with jester as my secondary. So it's no wonder that I'm funny, right? Because that naturally means that's what I'm trying to do. If you're not a jester, you don't have to be funny. So we'll kind of dive into all that, and you'll get to attend that thing as well. So all of that's on that page, bobbyklinck.com/email. You get all the details, and you can go from there.
That's pretty amazing. And I just, so the audience who, if you don't know Bobby, he's 100% not pulling your leg about Bomb You being free. I have been part of Bomb You from the early times. Some of the best content that I have come across in terms of what you can learn, especially if you then take the next step and apply it. So when he says it's free, it is free. You just have to do the work. And I'm even canceling birthday celebration with my daughter so that I can attend the email thing, and we're postponing her until the weekend.
Well, you'll have more fun on the weekend anyway.
It doesn't interfere with Bobby. So with that, thank you so much for being my guest. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us and with the followers of the Sister Street Show. This is Mary Nunley, your host for today, saying goodbye, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for future videos.